This is your host, Todd Lewis of the Praise of Folly podcast. I'm again joined by Fritz Imperial, and we're here to discuss the incredible upset that is the Trump election.
Make America great again.
Hashtag Trump wins.
Hashtag not my president. Hashtag let Hillary win.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is how did the pollsters get away conning us for like a whole year?
I think it's just they failed to. They failed to just recognize a huge portion of the electorate. They got the same thing happened with Brexit, where literally all the polls leading up to it said it was going to be 52% stay, 48% leave. It ended up being the reverse. So these pollsters really need to start getting their act together and start trying to actually get stuff accurately, because they keep getting the stuff wrong, and people are not going to start believing the polls anymore.
Yeah, but Donald Trump said that the polls were rigged against him. It sure looks like it.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think, he said the polls were great. To be fair, he said the polls were great when he was winning. So, literally in a tweet a few days earlier, he says our electoral college system is corrupt and needs to be fixed. And it's like, but you won through the electoral system, not the popular vote. So.
Yeah.
It's a bit worrying, but it's not too bad. I don't think it's I'm not that worried about that.
One of the things that I'm surprised the pundits haven't mentioned is a Republican winning Pennsylvania is an upset of. The last time a Republican won Pennsylvania was 30 years ago in 1988 when George Herbert Walker Bush won Pennsylvania. This is absolutely incredible that a Republican could take Pennsylvania, but then he also took Michigan and
Ohio
and
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin. I mean,
and Florida.
Ohio flipped. Yeah, and but I'm talking about like the North, the industrial Midwest.
North. Yeah.
Well, Midwest. Yeah, that usually goes Democrat consistently since George Herbert Walker Bush.
This is what happens when you tell white working class people that they're all terrible racists unless they vote your way, and even if they do, they still call you racist, and they're like, you know what, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, and it also what happens when Republicans stop attacking white working class people, by selling their jobs overseas.
Exactly. I was gonna say, I think definitely the assertion that we're going to stop these jobs from going to Mexico or China, we're going to stop that from happening and let you keep your jobs, because Republicans, the old Republican, the Buckley, now the old Buckley conservative, the hardcore free market thing, that's not really the case anymore. That's not what won. What won was protectionism. What won was almost like mercantilism, if we're going to use old terms.
Well, what won was the ghost of Pat Buchanan, but actually, this is one of the things that you'll hear a lot, especially in the primaries, that Trump was not, quote, a conservative. Now, this is still one of the things that, now, granted, they could mean one of two things, right? They could mean that A, the policies Trump advocates are not conservative policies, or they could mean B, that whatever Trump really believes, it's not this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's B, well, who knows? Because Trump has never been in government before. So if by that they mean B, that's really hard to call. But if they mean A, that's ludicrous, because Trump's policies are lifted from the paleo-conservative policies of Patrick J. Buchanan and what's the other guy's name? I can't remember his name now. But there's another Samuel Francis. And yeah, I mean, this economic nationalism, keeping jobs in America, looking out for American workers, non-interventionism abroad. That is straight up Pat Buchanan. So unless you want to say Pat Buchanan isn't a conservative, which I doubt too many people would want to say, then yeah, his policies are conservative.
Well,
policies.
what even constitutes a conservative anymore? I mean, if could you call the left Democrats now conservatives if they want to conserve Obamacare and Planned Parenthood? If that's what.
Yeah,
I think that's why there's credence to calling ourselves, instead of conservatives, traditionalists.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly conservative, at least as it's used in the common vernacular, is kind of relational. It's relational to what was like, 30 years ago. Like
Mhm.
like for instance, they would say that in the 1980s, the Soviet hardliners were the conservatives,
Yeah.
and the liberals were the reformers, like Yeltsin, which is just really weird to hear that. Like,
Mhm.
Stalinists are conservative? I don't think so.
I remember reading this. Apparently, I think the New York Daily News, the one where the Black Lives Matter white guy Sean King now has a job. They said they reported ISIS and the Islamic State are cheering a Trump presidency. I'm like, so what? So what? He's promised to destroy them. I don't care if they think, oh, this is going to start a war against Islam. It's like, no. No, but
I know.
it's just it's them trying. And the thing is, I disagree with the distributist when he said, oh, this is bad in the long run because it helps their narrative. That narrative was never going to change. I don't care if Clinton won and we got a black trans Muslim president next time. They would still say we live in a white supremacist society, because if they don't say that, then they don't have a job anymore.
Well, exactly. And the other thing is the fact that Trump won has broken the narrative, because it shows that the liberal media is not nearly as powerful as they think they are, and they really, really miscalculated who was going to win the election.
Well, I think they still have the power in terms of they've got huge amounts of money. But I would say their influence is waning because the fact that people don't really aren't listening to them anymore, and increasingly, alternative media sites like say Breitbart or like Steven Crowder and whatnot, those are becoming bigger and bigger. But anyways, yeah. The thing is, I would say if this is not a strategic victory. I would say this is a massive tactical victory, because the three areas where the progressives have become entrenched is the government, the media, and education. This has been a massive blow in inroads from the top down into the government. It's helped discredit the media. So basically, if we're going to use military terms, a military analogy, what the media has been doing is basically it's like a World War I style. Throw all your soldiers. Just basically like sending their attacks into a meat grinder, and now they're being left very vulnerable. The problem, though, is I think the ultimate goal, basically, essentially, the industrial heartland of progressivism is the education institutions, because this is where progressives are produced.
Oh yeah. Well,
And
this is why that the quickest way to, I mean, I should say the quickest way, not necessarily the best way to shut this down, is to privatize education, abolish the Department of Education, and privatize all of it. Because in that sense, they lose the monopoly privilege they've had since, like, I don't know, Roosevelt or before.
Yeah. I would say, like, I guess, but within more practical terms, I think definitely, ending Common Core and doing whatever you can to localize educational control and encourage private religious and charter schools.
Whatever happened to the whole Texas textbook thing? Remember, like, I don't know, 6 years ago, there was a whole big brouhaha that Texas was trying to, like, do Christian propaganda through public schools.
Well,
I don't remember how that ended.
I think actually Ben McLean had a good point. Is anytime they say, well, you're using Christian propaganda, don't say, well, no, it's not propaganda. Just say, yeah, and any sort of this, all of this is propaganda. What you're doing is propaganda.
Yeah.
Oh no, sorry, I meant indoctrination. Indoctrination.
Yeah. Well, ours is good and yours is bad, right? That's the point.
Well, ours. It's the difference. I think it's the difference between if you can look up there's like a site called World War I propaganda posters, and it shows you can look up propaganda posters from from all the countries during World War I. And the thing I've really noticed is, sorry, this is about a bit of a history thing, but the ones coming from the Central Powers from Germany and Austria, those were a lot more positive focus. Like, they're always talking about, our glorious history, our brave German soldiers fighting, and how great our country is. They're really nice artwork about we should fight for this good cause and all that. The Allied propaganda is really disgusting, and it's all attack. It's all just because Hitler didn't exist yet. The Kaiser is Satan. The Central Powers are demons from hell, and we should kill them all. You really didn't have anywhere near that much negative stuff on the central power side. And I think to relate that back to what I was saying is, Christian propaganda. What is that? Well, we're asserting that there is a God and that there's an afterlife and that metaphysics matters and ethics and morals are objective. Whereas everybody else is going, no, this is the problem with liberalism is like, yeah, it's okay at pointing things out, but you have to produce something positive, in its place.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole idea. Well, we've digressed a little bit, but I totally agree. You can't fill nothing. You can't fill something with nothing. You have to have something else. Something bad has to be replaced with something good. But the whole idea. Back to the definition of a conservative. Within the American context, we've had pretty much 3 brands of conservatism in the past 50 years. We've had the sort of Buckleyite fusionist movement. We've had the neoconservative movement. So Buckley creates the modern conservative movement as we know it in the 1950s. And then we have the neoconservatives in the late 80s with Ronald Reagan, and then beyond, creating a very both the Buckleyites and the neocons were hawkish. And then we had, as a reaction to the neocons, the paleoconservatives, who were led by people like Sam Francis and Pat Buchanan, who were, at least on foreign policy, more dovish. They wanted to avoid external entanglements. Both the Buckleyites and the neocons were also in favor of a more cosmopolitan society. Immigration, certainly the neocons. The paleocons were like, no, what we need more is stop immigration to allow
allow integration and kind of allow the melting pot to actually simmer for a while, so new immigrants can actually assimilate and become part of the fabric of society.
Exactly. If you keep on coming in with no let up, then there's really no way for them to become Americans. And there's just the pot overflows. The melting pot just boils over, and it just spills all over the place. And then the other thing is that the paleoconservative, economically, again, the Buckleyites and the neocons are more free trade globalism, and the paleocons are more economic nationalist protectionist. And then, of course, the cultural conservatives, the social conservatism, which the Buckleyites and the paleocons they had strong elements of that. The neocons were less socially conservative. In fact, many of them are socially liberal. I mean, there's a lot of neocons.
It's kind of part of just a neoliberal sort of consensus with, culminating in the 90s with, Francis Fukuyama and the end of history that, look, culture and social values don't really matter so long as, because we're all Hegelians now. Democracy's won. We've defeated fascism. We've defeated monarchism. We've defeated communism. Essentially, going forward into this new millennium, the world's going to become more and more democratic, more and more liberal, more and more free market, and basically we'll have peace forever. And obviously, in the past 20 years, or since this millennium started, the complete reverse has happened, and to absolute disastrous effect. People don't really care. Culture does matter. Morals do matter. People aren't going to lay down and go, yep, we're all going to accept a globalist system. No.
Well, exactly. The other thing is, now I think when people of the Buckleyite persuasion or the fusionists, and I know Ben said that he's more of a fusionist, which is now dead in the water, they'll say that Trump isn't a conservative because he isn't socially conservative. And while certainly you and I would admit that that's not ideal, we prefer someone who is socially conservative, that doesn't make you not a conservative. I mean, the entire neocon movement is socially liberal, but it's been called the Conservative Party for like the past 30 years.
Yeah.
Even in the
essentially, the Republican Party is the closest thing we actually have to a genuinely liberal party. The Democrats are just progressives.
Well, exactly. So it's not. So I would say that Donald Trump is 2 parts Pat Buchanan, because he's got the economic nationalism. He's got the dovish foreign. Well, not the dovish, but America first.
Non-interventionist. Yeah, America first.
Non-interventionist. Yeah, so he's got. If you're 2/3 Pat Buchanan, that's good enough for me. I mean, I wish you were, 3/3 Pat Buchanan, but you're not. But
I think all I would want would be, with social conservatism. I think what he should do is, with abortion, because obviously that's incredibly important. First off, I think as Ben said, repeal all the Dear Colleague letters, revoke start being in favor of religious liberty. The cake thing is the whole you bake that cake or you go to jail thing. I think that should be over now. And I think with abortion, if having appointed Supreme Court, since he can appoint now pro-life conservative Supreme Court justices with Congress in his hands, now there is a chance to overturn Roe v. versus Wade. I think perhaps hold off on that until we get a bigger culture of life and the abortion rate drops even further than it's already dropping now. But in the short term, the next year, in the coming months, I really hope, and I think it's probably going to happen, is they're going to pass a law, defund Planned Parenthood.
I hope so.
And Trump actually has a plan. I was talking to Distributus last night. He said, the problem is that what he would do is Trump should go, we're gonna defund Planned Parenthood, take that money, quadruple it, and put it towards non-abortion option pregnancy centers. And apparently, in a statement from September, Trump said he would essentially do just that. He would defund Planned Parenthood so long as they keep performing abortions, and reallocate those funds to local health centers that don't perform abortions.
The other thing is, in his October debate with Hillary Clinton, he said that he wanted to appoint justices who would repeal Roe v. Wade, and in the long term. So I mean, whatever Trump believed about abortion earlier, he claims he wants to get rid of it now. So that's pretty good. Social conservative.
And the thing is, if this comes through the legislation, I don't think he's not going to veto it. So he's not going to veto any pro-life legislation. So that's good.
That too. I think
even if he's not vehemently for pro-life things, the fact is he's not against it, so he's not going to be vetoing it. Because last year they got a bill. It showed it was possible. They got a bill to defund Planned Parenthood through Congress, and it got up to the president's desk. Now we have a president that would sign that bill. Exactly.
I think that the biggest plus in the Donald Trump corner is his foreign policy. Hillary Clinton.
So we don't have to go to war with Russia now.
Exactly. I mean, Hillary Clinton was planning to restart the Cold War and heaven knows what accident or incident might happen that could lead. I mean, this would be like the Cuban Missile Crisis, but in reverse, where instead of Russia doing something stupid, it'd be America under Clinton doing something stupid that would lead to, DEFCON 2. And I'm like, do we really want to go to DEFCON 2 with the Russians? No, we don't.
I still doubt that we would. I think it would. I don't think it would have been a. Certainly, it might have been. Certainly, her as president. I don't actually know that much about it, but from what I guess, since the Russians are obviously very happy that Trump is president, obviously she would have continued the tense relations at best with Russia. Easily, it could have escalated into something bad. I'm not necessarily World War III. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but certainly us being on good terms with Russia, like Trump and Putin want, is going to be good. Because again, as Otto von Bismarck said, the secret of diplomacy is making a good treaty with Russia.
Exactly. But another another foreign policy problem would have been more Middle East disasters. It's not beyond the realm of the possible that Hillary would have invaded Syria.
Yeah.
Or tried to.
I think Trump. I think under Trump, probably Assad's going to win now.
Yes, I know, which means ISIS will be defeated and the Christians will not die in a bloodbath.
Well, I would be in favor of helping start a sort of Christian Zionism, whereas the Jews have Israel as a Jewish state. I think Middle East Christians, the best way to protect them would be to establish a Christian state in the Middle East.
Well, the Jews wanted to do that. In the 1980s, in the Lebanon invasion, they wanted to split Lebanon in two, where the southern half was the Christian half, and that would be.
I would support that.
But the entire international community stepped in and said no. Yeah,
that's sad. Again, a Christian state in the Middle East would be fantastic. It would piss off the Muslims even more because the fact that there's a Jewish state in the Middle East is the most infuriating thing to them because that's just a massive affront to them, and I like that Israel is a massive thorn in their side.
Oh, it is.
Because with Islam, because it's an inherently political ideology as well as a religion, any sort of territorial loss to Islam is an affront.
Yes. But Donald Trump's what he said about foreign policy, and certainly Putin believes him, because Putin, right after Trump got the nomination, basically wrote a letter saying, "Hey, I'm ready to normalize U.S.-Russia relations again." And I'm like, wow, détente, finally, after like how many years? Like almost 12 years. Beginning with Georgia in 2007 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was just a complete disaster.
And I think
Russia is an ally in the war on terror. This should not be happening.
And again, we should. I think we should definitely seek good, amicable relations with them. I think this is even another. I think wider foreign policy-wise, this is a blow to the European Union and like all the Eurocrats and the elites like Merkel and all that, because Trump has been an avid opponent of the migrant crisis. He's in vehement support of Brexit. And now, if he's on friendly terms with Russia, that means you pretty much are going to have the European Union being squeezed and pressured by Russia and the United States to either reform and stop being dictatorial and hate their own people, or the EU will collapse.
Well, it's funny you bring up that the EU and Brexit. In many ways, Brexit was the beginning of all this. Mm-hmm. Brexit was the English said, you know what, we're done. And you even said earlier in this podcast that they predicted the failure of Brexit, but it didn't fail. I loved it when Nigel Farage went to the European Union Assembly and said, "All of you people laughed at me, saying that this would never happen. You're not laughing now, are you?" I was like, "Whoa, dude!"
And then he streamed. Now I know that none of you have ever done a real job in your lives. I mean, it was.
But what I'm saying is that whole method of being fed up with the globalist agenda begins in England, and then it ripples across to the United States, where Trump says, "Okay, we're done," and there's a groundswell of popular support. Now, maybe Marine Le Pen wins in France in 2017,
and Garrett Wilders.
And then at that point, when Merkel's up for the vote, it could be the end of the globalist agenda.
Well, the beginning of the end. The problem is that's politically. You still have the academic institutions that keep pumping these people out.
Yeah, that is, well, there's two problems here, right? We've got the academic institutions, but even more of a problem are the large corporations that are tax exempt that pay for these institutions. All these think tanks and nonprofit, institutions that are there to brainwash people, and of course, who pays for the curricula at these universities? It's these mega corporations. Mm-hmm. Part of the way you rein them in is what Trump says. You penalize them for going overseas. If they want to ship U.S. jobs to China, you put a surtax on it. You penalize them, and they won't do it.
Or they'll fail as a company in smaller ones. The ideal would be if Ford, Chevy, and GMC collapsed, and they were allowed to. If the banks and these companies were allowed to fail, and then you have and then because of the free market, you get new smaller companies rise, and the free market exchange. We get nice, because what's good for the best for the customer is when you have a polyopoly, which is dozens and dozens of medium-sized companies all competing with each other.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if the consumer's out of a job, he can't pay for the products that he wanted to buy. Yes. So I mean, this whole globalist nonsense. Look, people, if Joe Sixpack doesn't have a job, he can't buy your $1 yo-yos. Not going to happen.
Yeah, you have to have $1 first before you can buy the dollar yo-yo.
Exactly, which they don't have. So I think that the fact that Trump has pretty much ended the new Cold War and normalized relations with Russia, that's pretty much going to happen, I think.
He's already invited the new PM of Britain, Theresa May, to meet with him soon.
Is she the new Margaret Thatcher? I hope so.
Well, she was initially against Brexit, but after the whole leadership shakeup in the Conservative Party, she's now she became the Prime Minister a few months ago, and she's adamant. Like her I guess her famous statement is "Brexit means Brexit," and she's absolutely adamant that they're going to leave no matter what. She doesn't care about all this nonsense of we need a second referendum, no, leave. And she's like, nope, we're going to invoke Article 50. We're going to deliver our message that we're going to deliver the official thing in March. I don't care.
Well, Maggie would have been in favor of Brexit.
Yeah.
Well, can you imagine Trump and what was the new Prime Minister of England?
Theresa May.
Theresa May. What if Trump and May were the new Reagan and Thatcher of the 2015s and 16s?
And Shinzo Abe is the new because I think that the prime minister of Japan during the 80s was also kind of an anti-communist, kind of hardline anti-communist. Shinzo Abe.
So the question is, who would be Germany's Helmut Kohl?
Helmut Kohl, Frau Petri. She's the leader of the AfD. Well, well, I don't think the right-wing Alternative for Deutschland is going to be. I don't think it's going to win. It's going to certainly get a large number of votes, but the Christian Democrats in Germany, I think if they're smart, they're going to choose a different leader other than Merkel to be the new head of the Conservative Party and the next chancellor.
Yeah, but I think the general analysis that Brexit and Trump are a part of a larger worldwide counter-reaction to globalism is probably correct.
I would say yes, it is indicative. I'm just wondering, like, how much steam does this have? Is this gonna have enough power? Do you think this has enough strength to spill over into Europe as well?
Well, I would say it's hard to tell this early what the staying power is of this movement. But I will say this: as globalism squeezes out the middle class in both England, America, and Europe, more and more people are going to be upset with the system. More and more people are going to want changes. And they're going to actually have a bleeding where the people that were okay and happy with globalism, like the big 90s boom, they're going to be like, that they can't rely on that support anymore. Because people are just going to say, I'm tired of losing my job. I'm tired of not being able to pay for my wife and kids. That's the
thing. That's the thing. It's like people, when people go, oh, people are sheep or whatnot, like, that might be applicable to like college students or like people that are, single young people that are making a lot of money. They don't have any prospects with a family and they're making a job in the tech industry. That's not really who's affected. People are affected when they actually start losing their job and they can't afford basic things. Then they actually rise up.
Exactly. And in part, Trump tapped into that by his, strategy of going to the Rust Belt and going to white working class people.
And the thing is, he even racially, he got 29% of the Latino vote, which is higher than both McCain and Romney. And because of that, the thing is, like, if I was a Hispanic, if I was a legal immigrant, or I was the son of legal immigrants, and I saw, and I'm working class most likely, and I see all these illegal immigrants that they didn't have to go through any work to get across the country, and they're getting all these benefits, and now they're like screaming about how much they hate the country that that I loved so much, that I liked so much, and saw as an opportunity that I wanted to move here. I would be furious with them because they're making me look bad.
Well, it's funny you say that. Where I work, there's a Mexican immigrant who's a chemist, and yeah, basically, he didn't believe the liberal lies about Trump being anti-Hispanic. It was just against the illegals. He can't vote, but he said if he could have voted, he would have voted for Trump.
Is he a legal immigrant?
Yeah, he's a legal one.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but that's the whole point. Trump is going after the illegal immigrants. But actually, now that we're on the point of immigration, one of the things that the distributor likes to say is that the true solution isn't political. He's absolutely right. The ultimate solution is
the long term. Like, it's like it's demographic and like and cultural force. Again, going from this bottom up, but a top down victory right now is still pretty good.
Well, look, but here's the problem. The question here is demographics, and this is a political solution. If the borders are not closed,
yes, absolutely.
If the borders are not closed, then the Democrats will just win forever because they just have all these third world immigrants coming in voting Democrat, and the British do the same thing with the Labour Party. They brought in all these immigrants that nobody asked for or wanted, and now they're voting Labour all the time. And
now the Labour Party is in complete collapse because none of their traditional constituents like them anymore because if you're a working class voter, you don't want immigration. You don't want low skill immigrants because they depress wages and take your job.
They also make full employment an impossibility.
Yeah.
Which it's so weird. Like if you're supporting the working class, you can't support open immigration. But you see, between 1948 and 1988, the Republicans won California in all but one election, and that was in '64 with Lyndon Johnson. That was the only time in that 40-year period. Now after that, California sense, and that's because of Hispanic immigration.
Mhm.
Largely, it's not the only reason, but it's like
Also,
the number one.
I'm happy with stemming illegal immigration from the Middle East. I don't care. I don't care if it sounds racist. I don't care because I don't want us to be like Europe. We've been really fortunate so far that even though there's millions of Muslims living here, they're not a large. They're still less than 1% of the population, and they're largely, and a good number of them are integrated. That we don't have these massive Muslim communities yet.
Yeah,
I don't
I would
want
agree,
any
but
more.
with one caveat. I would agree with one caveat. Any Christian immigrant should come here from the Middle East. Coptic
Yeah,
Christians,
absolutely. They should be
Nestorian
granted
Christians.
asylum. They should be
Yeah,
granted asylum.
all of those people fleeing from jihadi maniacs should be
Well,
allowed.
how about well them and like other religious minorities like Yazidis and
Yazidis,
stuff,
yeah,
stuff
sure.
like that.
They're not gonna overthrow the U.S. government for Allah Akbar. So,
You mean Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi?
yeah, exactly. So they're that I would be okay with that. But the thing is, a nation cannot exist without borders. And if open immigration
No
abolishes
borders are
borders,
racist. No borders are racist. I'm moving to Canada. What's
uh-oh.
Canada? Borders are racist.
Exactly. So, but if you want the demographic victory that Dave wants, you have to shut the borders down. If you don't, you won't ever get it.
Yeah.
And so a Trump victory politically could be decisive. If Trump can actually institute real meaningful border controls like we used to have in the 1920s and 30s and even and earlier, if we could reinstitute border controls, we could actually, I mean, that's what Ann Coulter said in Adios America. She's like, if we don't win the border war, it's over.
Yeah. And the thing is, this isn't even racism. It's a basic fact that you can't have this much immigration without negative consequences coming from it. Again, it's as you said, the melting pot would boil over, and the fact is, it's completely unfair to legal immigrants. It's completely unfair to people who are working class, and so the fact is, I'm glad the wall is probably going to get built now. And illegal, but wait, my problem is though, what if the Mexican immigrants just start taking boats around the coast, like a little short trip around the Mexican coast to get to the U.S. illegally?
Well, yeah, that would be one way to get around it.
Mine the Gulf of Mexico. Put tons of mines there.
No, but basically, here's the point. Here's the other thing. Now that Trump has sort of gained the white working class vote, the classically liberal vote, because they gave up on what I mean. Remember in 2012, they boasted that Barack Obama had given up on the white working class vote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was kind of a disaster. But here's the thing: some of the biggest advocates of border controls and immigration controls in the early 20th century were labor unions. The AFL, the Knights of Labor, they passed for I think it was in 1928, there was a big bill restricting immigration from Asia, threat at the time to U.S. immigration.
The Yellow Peril.
And so what happened was, it was the labor unions, because they understood the threat that it posed to their livelihood. So if Trump given that he's captured the white working class vote, it is quite possible that he could then galvanize that to push through border control.
Hold on a second. Breaking news. Rob Kardashian and Blake Shannon named their daughter Dream Kardashian. Man, what amazing news. This is such insightful commentary of this. It's such an important... Sorry, it was trending on Twitter.
Oh my gosh!
Celebrity news is the most vapid, ridiculous nonsense. I absolutely
But what I'm saying is, though, the political solution is a short-term solution. But sometimes long-term goals start by having short-term fixes. And
exactly.
Border controls and immigration controls will give us the potential for a demographic victory in the future, which if we don't have, we're never going to get.
Well, yeah, exactly. As of right now, Republicans can still obviously, as we've seen, win a presidential election and state elections. The problem is, obviously, in a few decades, once whites finally become a minority, which unless Trump does, get that wall built and start en masse deporting illegal immigrants, we will become a minority, and then Republicans can never win again.
I will say one thing, though, about the immigration crisis, which I still think is a crisis, by the way. But I remember about 10 years ago, well, maybe not 10, maybe 8 years ago, I was studying demographics around the world. this segues to our atheist discussion we had earlier. Atheists predicted that religion would die out. And of course, the atheists are the ones dying out, not the religious people. And
Yeah.
I read various books. One of them was The Empty Cradle by a guy named Longman. And they were talking about how certain population groups are just dying out because of essentially birth control and not having children. And it turns out that Latin America is actually on the verge of a major population collapse. He predicted that it was like in 2006 or 7, he wrote the book. He predicted within like the next 40, 50 years, Mexico would have an aging population that would not be able to send out immigrants, which now that's a long-term prediction. That's another 30, 40 years from now. But the fact is demographics is destiny, and Latin America is dying because many Latin American countries are not having children, despite the fact that they're Catholic.
Yeah.
They
and they're poor.
Yeah, they're Catholic and they're poor, and they're still not having children at replacement levels. I mean, Mexico especially. Well, see, here's the problem. Population will continue to grow until 2050 because people die off later. Medicine is so
even decades after Japan's birth rate went below replacement rate, their population didn't start decreasing until about 10 years ago.
Exactly. So Mexico, in a lot of ways, is in a similar position. Their population is getting to the point where it can't replace itself. But what's happening though is that the medic even in Mexico, healthcare is really good, compared to before the modern world, and old people live longer. So the population is still growing, but it's illusory because
it's aging.
And it's aging. See, that's the point. It's aging.
Actually, Distributors, he made a video today, talking, doing some more answers, and he says he actually made a really, really good point about how when people get asked is traditionalism compatible with modernity, he says the actual question should be, is traditionalism compatible with reality? And he says that's a resounding yes, because traditionalism has worked absolutely fine and serves as a perfectly acceptable and good basis for Western society for 2,000 years. And the real question is modernity compatible with reality? And he says, if you look at the birth rates, absolutely not. Because the fact is, under modernity, what with the sexual revolution and everything, modernity makes populations die. It's the same thing as the Shakers, where the Shakers asserted that, any sex at all, even for procreation and marriage, is immoral, and so there are not any Shakers anymore. And so that's the problem. That's with new atheism and sexual revolution. That's basically made it so modernity is not going to be an alternative. That's not going to exist in the long run because it can't sustain itself. Something's going to take it over. And is it going to be Islam? Is it going to be Christianity? Is it going to be white nationalism?
Well, you're right. Here's the thing, Fritz. Modernity's dying. In the West, what is going to replace it? Now, white nationalists and Christians all are pro-natalist, right? The white nationalists want to have more white children. They want to have more white babies. But yes, they want to have abortion like Call of the Week, which could be sort of counterintuitive for a growing population.
And it's immoral.
And it's immoral. But the point is, they still fundamentally recognize that white people have to be having children. Yes. And of course, Muslims believe that, and Christians believe that. So the liberal atheist, he's not in the game anymore. His time is over. He's done. The question is, if you're an atheist or a liberal, here's your choice: Christians, white nationalists, or Muslims. Choose wisely.
I would advocate you choose the one who actually lets you have freedom that lets you have the most freedom. And guess who that is? The Christians. No, Fritz, it's the Muslims, man. Like Spain, the Middle Ages, it was like a paradise, a liberal paradise. No, just kidding. Come on. Islam is totally guns don't cause Islam. Remember, guns cause Islam, right?
No, that's right.
I think I remember from my live the election podcast. I made this assertion against libertarianism. I said guns don't cause roads.
One of the things, Fritz, that I enjoyed so much these past couple of days, and I know you did too, was watching the liberal talking heads melt down.
Oh, like Rachel Maddow and Stephen Colbert and everybody?
Okay, let's go one at a time. Rachel Maddow, beautiful, man.
This is our country. This is our country now. This isn't a dream. You haven't died and gone to hell. This is us.
And then, or how about when Carville on CNN said, "This is the end of Obamacare. This is the end of oh, there's something else, and this is the beginning of a one-party state." I'm like, get a grip, dude. A one-party state?
That's what we were going to get if Hillary won.
Well, exactly.
I think that's been my major gripe, is that essentially almost every single complaint people are having about a Trump presidency, that's actually what was going to happen under Clinton. Like, no, people's healthcare was going to get screwed over if Clinton won because Obamacare would stay up. We would have war. We would have World War III because of her relationship with Russia.
Yep.
And the thing is, I've been surprised, or I think the impact, the gravity of this anti-establishment populist movement, it's starting to be felt. People are starting to understand it because the fact that the president and Clinton both, their rhetoric during these past couple days after the election has been surprisingly gracious, courteous, and in touch with reality. Because, if you're Obama, obviously, he basically, this is why I do give him credit for this, because he's acting like an adult here. He's like,
yes,
okay,
yes.
He's like, he went on TV yesterday. He says, look, we don't always get the election we wanted. We don't always get the result we wanted. That's part of our democracy, but we have to remember we're all on the same team, and we should work with the new president. And I want to act as courteous, have my team act as courteous to him as Bush's were to me. And Clinton says we should wish him the best of luck with an open mind. And that's them essentially understanding, okay, reality exists. You can't be like a child, like all these protests are. And I want these protests to continue, because that's bleeding out the left narrative even more, because it's making them look worse and worse and worse.
Oh yeah. Oh, what was priceless though was who's that guy from Hardball? Chris Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see Chris Matthews' meltdown?
No, I didn't. I should look that up too.
Oh man, it was beautiful. But you mentioned Colbert, and I have to say this: of all the liberals, I think Colbert had the best response to the election. I actually watched it, and basically he saw like Hillary was losing, and like you could tell he was visibly shaken. Mm-hmm. But instead of like whining and pouting, Colbert did two things that really impressed me. He did one. He said, look, we all take this politics thing way too seriously. And he said that half the Democrats are afraid of Republicans and half the Republicans are afraid of Democrats. And he's like, this is not good. We like to hate each other in politics because it feels good for a while. But in the long run, this happens. And then in order to sort of like defuse it and make us just laugh at ourselves, he said, we're all Americans. We can all agree on these things. Like, work internet sucks. Or like an empty, when you got like almost an empty tank, it doesn't mean refill. It means how far can you get to the next city? And, that's the kind of way you want to deal with that. I was really actually impressed by the maturity of Colbert's response.
Well, and that might be part of the media waking up. Even if they don't want to change their views, they have to understand, if you don't want it, first off, you need to act like an adult, stop acting like a child. Secondly, you've got to freaking accept reality. You have to believe reality now, and deal with it. Basically, just you can't. This is so much like Brexit, where now like there's apparently a change.org petition to like reverse and have Hillary win. Just like in Britain, they had like all these people pledged to go, we want another referendum.
I know it. The one thing is, did you see? It was leading up to the election. This is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. James Carville was being interviewed on MSNBC about the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton, mm-hmm. and he claimed that this whole thing was a conspiracy by the Republicans, National Convention, by the FBI and the KGB.
And the reptilians, the Jews, and the Illuminati.
I mean, the KGB hasn't been around for over 20 years.
No, Putin is KGB. Don't get with the program, man. Come on.
Oh, that's right. That's why Putin built all those churches, right, Fritz?
Yeah. That's why. And that's. I think containment policy. If we had to go to a second Cold War, it wouldn't. Containment policy wouldn't work because under Putin's presidency, the actual standard of living for Russians has dramatically increased. Like the average wage for the Russian citizen, their healthcare costs, and things have genuinely gotten better for them under his presidency.
Well, the other thing,
and so obviously he's basically, and he is trying to expand a little bit, but look at where he's actually tried to expand into Crimea and the Russian speaking parts of Ukraine. He's trying to get, at most he wants provinces that are ethnically Russian, which I think that's perfectly kind of acceptable, because like, look, these people are our ethnicity, our culture, they want to be part of us. And like, that's what I was absolutely disgusted when like everyone keeps talking about, even on Fox News and like conservatives yelling about Crimea. Look, this was a democratic, well, maybe it wasn't democratic, but it was at least a referendum on, look, from these results, the Crimean people wanted to become Russia.
Well, exactly. Okay, so here's the thing: Russia, if Russia is stable at home and economically secure, they are less expansionist. When the Russians feel like their economy is going down and their standard of living is in danger, the Russian leader always distracts them by going to war. Yes. So, what if Trump normalizes relations with Putin, which I think he will, and he gets rid of the embargo, sanctions on Russia, that will then de-escalate the expansionist tendencies of Putin. Putin can then trade with America and Europe, get his standard of living up, and the Russian people will be happy with their standard of living, and Putin won't have to distract them by going into Ukraine or going into Caucasus or going into all these other countries. So getting rid of the sanctions will actually pacify the Russian bear. The Russian bear will be like, hey, you know what? We're in the international. See, here's the thing. Back with Peter the Great up until Nicholas II, Europe said to Russia, look, we have a certain rules of the international community, and we want you to be a part of that international community. We want you to have a stake in the international community. And Russia, for that 200-year period, played by the rules in that international community. After the Cold War, we gave Russia the middle finger, and they felt no reason to play by the rules because they weren't going to be benefit by those rules. What Trump could hopefully do is say, look, we have this set of rules for the international community, and we want Russia to be a member of that community. And so as long as Russia's incentivized to play according to those, if Russia's not going to get screwed over by the international community, it'll be incentivized to play by those rules, and it'll be far more predictable, far more easy to get along with.
And that would be immensely helpful towards a Trump legacy, because it would mean, hey, like that could be touted as one of the things. He helped prepare relations with Russia, and he helped to guarantee peace. And exactly. That's no small feat.
I'm waiting for photoshops of Trump and Obama riding grizzly bears together.
You mean Trump and Putin?
Yeah, Trump and Putin. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Obama could ever go near the woods. He's a bit too frail for that.
I meant to say Putin, but yeah.
He ride on this little bicycle with a little bell on it.
I want Trump and Putin riding grizzly bears together. That's going to be awesome. Right?
Trump has to keep his shirt on, though. I'm sorry, but he has to do that.
Putin might be able to get away with it, but not Trump, right?
Yeah. And then I think international relations. I think also the pressure is going to be on. It's going to be very encouraging for the populist right-wing movements in Europe. Which thing is, even though partially it is ethnic nationalism, the thing is, I'm in full support of these parties because look, they're the only parties that are actually talking sense about immigration and Islam at this point.
And not only that, especially in Eastern Europe, a lot of those parties are pro-Christian, like in Poland and Hungary.
Yeah. And Austria actually might elect its far-right leader in December.
It looks like we're going to have a national. Now, here's the other thing: the defenders of the globalist order, specifically in Europe,
George Soros.
They'll say that. I've heard them say this before. That, well, the European Union has presided over the longest peace in Europe, and it brought us stability and prosperity. And I'm like, post-Treaty of Vienna, not too bad for Europe, was it, Fritz?
Yeah, there were wars, but they were relatively short. The worst, and it was usually just internal conflicts. Prussia asserting leadership in Germany and forming Germany. The only
Italy
other
and Sardinia, Piedmont doing the same thing in Italy.
Yeah, it was nation building. internal nation building, and the thing is, the only prolonged war really was the Crimean conflict.
Yeah, that was due to a lot of reasons: poor logistic or difficult logistics,
And
allies.
it was also just diplomacy. That was really kind of an attempt to uphold the concert of Europe, because you want to keep the balance. They didn't want Russia to become too powerful, so they wanted to stop them from destroying the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, well, this whole idea of the concert of Europe or the global community, when the Soviet Union was a pariah state, which it should have been, I understand why you didn't want to give them any inch at all, and I agree with that. But when Russia gave up communism, the first thing you should have done is said, okay, now that the disgusting totalitarian regime is over with, we are going to bring you, the Russians, back into the fold, just like Peter and Nicholas and Catherine were in the international community. And Peter, Nicholas, and Catherine weren't crazy.
Are you talking about Nicholas the First?
Both.
Nicholas II was incredibly. He was a major part. The thing is, like, you look at the Russo-Japanese War, right? That was supposed to be this quick victory over these little yellow men to kind of placate the Russians grumbling over them still living in serfdom and horrible working conditions. It completely backfired, and they had a failed revolution.
Well, what I mean is Nicholas was predictable. Nicholas wasn't going to upset the balance of power in Europe.
I wouldn't even say that. He was so incompetent and just absolutely out of touch with any sort of reality. He walked into World War I without thinking it through.
Well, yeah, that's true. But generally speaking, though, the Russian leadership in that 200-year period played by the rules of the game, and everything was more or less, I wouldn't say peaceful, but it was. You didn't have these really weird total wars with Napoleon.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but you know who the masters of a peaceful period are? It's the Japanese following Tokugawa's ascension, the beginning of the shogunate. Essentially, you had a 200-year period of internal external peace with Japan, managing to completely shut out the world for 200 years of being at peace, that's no small feat either.
No, but so Trump's number one positive is his foreign policy. But domestically, Trump has a couple of very good positives as well. His view of getting jobs back to America, his view of restricting immigration and protecting America, just stopping the chaos of this unlimited immigration, restoring national sovereignty as opposed to the global sovereignty of the globalism. And to be fair, none of the other Republican candidates, not even Rand Paul, who I probably would be my second pick, would have done that.
Well, maybe Ted Cruz, but
Ted Cruz wanted to actually expand immigration, legal immigration, but still, we need to have time to assimilate. We need to stop the immigration for a while. I think Pat Buchanan said it takes like 20 years to assimilate, so having a 20-year moratorium on most immigration. And I certainly agree with Trump on not allowing Muslims into the country. That's it's like, remember that M&M meme? There's like 1 in 100 M&Ms are poisoned.
Go ahead. It was Skittles. I think it was Skittles.
Skittles, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's I don't understand how everyone was really pissed. Like, everyone says that's Islamophobic. That's not the point. The whole point of that comment, of that statement, is look, yeah, we want to help refugees. Sure, that's good intentions, but the problem is, look, 100 of these refugees, or 99 of 100 refugees could be perfectly peaceful and fine, but one of them could be a terrorist. Do we want to take that risk?
Well, Europe did take that risk, and you had Paris and Cologne and Brussels. That's not a risk that's worth taking now, is it, Fritz?
No. And again, the assertion is the way this could have been perfectly fixed is if the European Union, if they said, all right, we do think we have a moral obligation to help these people. Okay, let's go, start building camps in the surrounding countries for the refugees and having them go there and allowing a small number of asylum seekers into Europe and then return them after the war ends. That would have cost only a fraction of the cost, and it wouldn't have led to any of the social problems.
Yeah, yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit. What do you think was the most decisive element in the failure of Hillary Clinton? Was it the email leaks?
Anthony Weiner's penis.
All right, come on, Fred. Seriously.
I would say what her failure is. I think it basket of deplorables, probably. Well, I mean, the whole thing with Anthony Weiner, it's just the massive amounts of scandals, you know?
I mean, the FBI investigation, WikiLeaks.
And I think, yeah, I almost think that, you know, Comey withdrawing it after he reopened it was like, I think that it's just sort of everyone, yeah. Yeah, there's massive corruption. We don't like this at all. We're going to vote for Trump. I think it was because she was just the more unlikable candidate, you know?
Yeah. I hope that Donald Trump drops all charges against Julian Assange so he can leave.
Apparently Sargon of Cod said, like, one of the first things that he should do should be to pardon Edward Snowden and Julian Assange.
Oh, definitely. The other thing that I recommend, we have statues to Assange and Snowden in D.C. I mean, those guys...
Or give them a job. At the very least, just give them a job. Give them a job in, like, in the department. You know, give him hire Clinton for Clinton in the same and have her have to work for Julian Assange.
That would be amazing.
I would. Here's what I would do. I would say, if Trump should, because there's no real point. Hillary doesn't really pose a threat to anyone anymore. But the dragon has been castrated, essentially.
Or ding dong, the witch is dead.
Well, she's not dead, but I think it's more just
No, she's politically dead.
She's been defanged. She can't do anything anymore. I think. How about this? Indict her and have her, guilty, but have a very light sentence, like just a big fine. Don't send her to jail.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how Hillary is. If she's prosecuted.
Because remember this, she's an old woman with health problems.
She is. Did you hear about the interview between John Pilger and Julian Assange? It's about a week ago.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, well, Julian Assange was talking about his latest bout of WikiLeaks, and he said basically that Hillary Clinton pretty much was the leading force behind the invasion of Libya. And the reason why she did that was, of all things, to use it as a feather in her cap for the general election. Well, it had an effect on the general election, all right, but not the one she intended. Benghazi just never left her. That specter stalked her all the way to defeat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you have, Weiner and Podesta and Benghazi and WikiLeaks, I mean, that woman was just shot at from every possible corner. I mean... Even
with all of the media, backing her.
What this shows us is that the liberal media and establishment is not omnipotent, and that it can be given some setbacks. So the question is, how do we use the short-term political victory for a long-term social, ethical, societal, demographic progress?
I would say right now with this, it's essentially, this is, if we're going to use, if basically the three enemies we're facing are the three major, theater of wars are the government, the media, and education. Right now, we just won a massive kind of upset, battle against them in the progressives in the political sphere, right? Now it's almost like right now the media has been sending huge amounts of reinforcements and attack after attack that keeps getting mowed down against them. So they're also vulnerable as well. What we should do right now, because the progressives, the Democrats, are going to come back in a few years. If and when they come back, defenses should be set up,
Yes.
So I think what distributor said, with Planned Parenthood is, don't just defund it and take that money and then give it and reallocate it to non-abortion option pregnancy centers. Do stuff like that, and obviously shore up the Supreme Court with conservatives, because that lasts for decades. And then younger conservatives, like a Ted Cruz would be good on the Supreme Court because he's in his 40s. And then, yeah, and so basically exploit this as much as you can. And then as we go after other things, like we should keep the attack up against the media and education, but set up defenses in the political sphere to make it so that repealing these legislation and reforms makes it incredibly hard to do if and when the Democrats come back.
Yeah. So we're about out of time. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Oh, that was short. Make America great again, I guess. Everyone just keep on the lookout and just enjoy the social. It's great now I can look at all these like social justice warriors screaming about how Trump is racist, but now I can just sit back and laugh at it.
Exactly. Hashtag the God Emperor won.
The God Emperor. See, I'm monarchist. That we always win in the end.
Exactly. So this is Todd Lewis, the Praise of Folly podcast, signing off.